Hi guys! So today we're going to discuss colonial ignorance. So pag sinabi natin colonial ignorance, according to Billy, it is about hearing and seeing wrongly. Ito yung outcome ng pag-erase, pag-dismiss, pag-distort, at paglilimot ng lives, cultures, and histories ng mga taong na-colonized. According to Linda Martin Alcoff's philosophy and philosophical practice, Eurocentrism as an epistemology of ignorance, there exists a problem of colonial ignorance, kung saan we think that the best form or yung standard ng philosophical systems is that of the Europeans and that of the Western. So we think na yung philosophy na meron tayo ngayon is universal and applicable to everyone. So we also think na it is objective and should not be affected by our personal repercussions. So si Alcoff, diniscuss niya dun sa article niya na during the period of colonization, yung European philosophers assume na yung philosophical beliefs and norms nila ay universal and widely acceptable and applicable despite not considering yung cultural and geographical aspect or differences ng mga groups all over the world. So sinabi din niya na yung philosophers din, hindi sila welcoming sa conversations about other perspectives which further exacerbate yung issue and led to numerous philosophical mistakes, hence yung Eurocentrism. So as questions toward philosophy being considered transcendent, nire-reinforce yung idea na yung West is yung birthplace and yung source ng philosophy. So what Alcoff is trying to say is that hindi daw enough na i-consider lang yung other perspectives and welcome other philosophical systems and beliefs, but rather a decolonization of how we teach and interpret every philosophical thought. So, by decolonization, ang ibig sabihin nito ay we should acknowledge yung colonial influences and try to separate that from what was present before the Western influence or the colonial influence. So, according to Yinchan, it is about recovering what is authentically non-Western, whether that consists of the art, the cultural practices, philosophical traditions, and knowledge. So, in Lewis Gordon's article which is entitled Decolonizing Philosophy, diniscuss niya na yung focus daw kasi ng philosophy nakadepende sa priorities kung saan siya pinapractice in certain parts of the world. For example, he stated that sa East Africans, nakafocus sila sa astronomy, architecture, and medicine. So this affected yung philosophical reflections nila in terms of justice, truths, and laws, as well as yung power negotiations among the population. So he states that to let go of colonial ideas and practices means to let go of the self. However, in an article entitled Comparative Philosophy and Colonial Struggle, the Epistemic Injustice of Colonization and Liberation of Human Resource, si Grant Silva, yung author, ina-argue niya na mahirap daw ma-decolonize yung philosophy kasi yung episteme or the conditions for the possibility of a claim or idea being possible or impossible within the space of knowledge, as put by Michael Foucault of Western philosophy, is contoured by the history of modern European colonization and ideological justifications. So, ang sinasabi dito ay mahirap ma-separate yung colonial influences sa mismong philosophy kasi it is yung European philosophy mismo yung nag-shape kung ano nga ba yung mako-consider natin as philosophy. So, nasi-shape niya na yung what is valid and what is not. So, as I quote Alcoff, you must rethink the very geography of epistemology or the way we reason and knowledge are geographically and culturally framed because the history of a philosophical idea may not account for its value, but it gives explanation to how they became so prominent or central to philosophical debates. Like yung sa what happened with the European philosophy. Kasi di ba yung mga West, parang sila halos nag-colonize sa atin. So, they can strongly force what they know in their ideas to people they are colonizing. So, parang mas naging prominent yung ideas nila. So, according to Grant Silva, yung multiple perspectives, so nag-agree siya kay Alcoff. So, yung multiple perspectives ng philosophy might trigger debates and uncertainties about which is the correct and valid one. So, si Silva in-argue niya na to decolonize philosophy means to consider and recognize yung origin stories ng colonization ng philosophy para maintindihan natin yung oppression na namamanifest ng colonial knowledge. So, si Grant Silva, minention niya si Bargava. So, si Bargava, in relation to the colonial immigrants, relate na yun sa epistemic injustice. So, the literature on epistemic injustice usually deals with the issue regarding race, gender, equality, pero not so much about the role of colonization in manifesting oppression or epistemic injustice. So, it is important to address yung role ng colonial ignorance in terms of epistemic injustice kasi this translates to our everyday lives. So, si Bargava, according sa kanya, yung colonization daw is a type of epistemic injustice na nagmamanifest sa economic, political, and cultural aspects ng buhay natin. So, the cultural aspect being yung concepts and categories kung saan naintindihan ng isang grupo yung sarili nila is changed and transformed by that by the colonizers or yung mga na-colonize na. So si Bargarva, nag-identify na yung three ways on how minds are colonized. So the first way how minds are colonized and leads to epistemic injustice is the imposition of abrupt change in the epistemic framework or a change in the ways of responding to material and social or cultural demands and reflect the range of opinions, wisdom traditions, and critical reflective capabilities of a community. So, nangyayari ito when a forceful event or alteration takes place among the community or kung saan yung isang grupo hindi na nila masustain, ma-retrieve, or ma-develop ang kanilang ways of thinking. So, this also include how yung changes in the religious systems and linguistic practices are utilized by the colonizers to commit epistemic injustice. For example, dito sa Pilipinas, nung na-colonize tayo ng mga Spaniards, yung ating traditional practices like yung rituals, offerings, and ancestor worship were labeled as pagan. So, na-suppress yun. So, yung di ba dati naniniwala tayo sa mga spirits, ganun. So, they were all changed. So, the colonizers, ginamit nila yung religion hindi lang para ma-convert tayo, but to control the population, i-reshape yung moral values natin, at ma-align yung social structures natin, pati yung knowledge natin with the European norms. So, evident din to sa Americans nung kinonalize niya. So, in terms of linguistic practices naman, evident to nung pag-colonize natin ng Americans. Kasi yung English, it became the primary language of instructions sa mga schools. So, yung native language natin, such as Tagalog, Cebuano, and Ilocano, parang naging pang-informal use na siya. So, nagkaroon ng hierarchy of languages kung saan yung English is associated with education, while yung native languages natin ay associated with or they were marginalized or labeled as for the uneducated, and they were seen as inferior. Yan. So the second way how minds are colonized is when yung indigenous way of thinking are dismissed and devalued by the colonizers and yung mga na-colonized. So dito, tinitake advantage ng mga colonizers yung mga similarities nila with the indigenous people, tapos bluntly nire-reject at nire-refute yung mga differences in opinions na meron sila. So this is so that the colonizers continue to hold power over the people. So according to Bargava, isang consequence nito ay nagpipave siya ng way for the false belief of universalism, which is yung foundation of colonizing culture. So the last way how our minds are colonized is when individualization is discouraged while ini-emphasize naman yung collective identity. So ito yung main concern ni Bargava kasi nabiblur yung individuality na ito yung nagbibigay ng uniqueness, diversity, and dynamic sa isang grupo. And this reflects kung ano nga ba talaga yung life. So what the colonizers do is they offer a totalizing, homogeneous, and static group identity. So naglilid to sa pagkawala ng epistemic autonomy or the ability to think for oneself. So example nito is yung erasure ng ethnic and regional identities natin. So pre-colonial Filipinos had diverse ethnic identities before. Cebuano, Ilocano, Tausug, and others. So each with unique languages, customs, and systems of governance. So nung dumating ng Spaniards, parang generalize nila tayo under the term Filipino. So parang nagkaroon tayo ng parang inimpose natin yung collective identity na yun, when in fact, we're much more diverse than that. So, all of these ways affect how our epistemic knowledge is shared, created, and valued. So, it is important to reiterate this epistemic injustices brought by colonization para ma-prevent yung colonial ignorance. So, I believe that just like what happened with the natural sciences, kung saan yung Western practices are upheld and believed to be superior, the same goes with philosophy, kung saan everything is modeled against the Western practices, beliefs, and ideologies. So sabi nga ni Nishiyama, yung ignorance of colonial history is to prevent the colonizers' accountability. So I believe na the colonization is also the key to recognize what counts as philosophy, and ano nga ba talaga yung philosophy. Kasi if we just recognize yung other forms of philosophy, parang kino-compare lang natin sila sa Western philosophy, which just gives them more power kasi parang sila yung nagiging standard, when in reality, they should not be.